If you're looking to buy a stacked NBA 2K account with max badges and more, visit sportstmb.com. He has been in the community for years and has hundreds of reviews. Click the first link in the description to get your account today.
Before this video starts, if you enjoy this video, there are many more like it already on the channel, with many more like it to come in the future, so subscribe. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I would really appreciate it. I upload almost daily, so if you're looking for some consistent sports talk while the world is on fire, this is the place for it. Also, real quick, there's not a new episode of the podcast out yet, but the podcast is now on Apple Podcasts, so if you've been waiting for it to be on that platform, it is now there. Go ahead and give us some 5-star reviews. 2 days ago, I made a video on whether or not Steve Nash deserved his MVPs and came to the conclusion that he probably didn't, but today I wanted to talk about the best player who never won MVP, determine who is the best player to not win MVP, see what was the closest to an MVP those players got, and see why those players did not win the MVP. The Most Valuable Player award is the most heavily debated individual award in the NBA, and the unfortunate aspect of this award is that it can only go to one player. So as a result, unless you are a top 5 player of all time, you often need to be caught in the right moment in order to win an MVP. And unfortunately for these players, that moment never quite caught on, and as a result, they never won an MVP. Let's talk about who those players are. For the sake of simplicity, I'm only going to be talking about 5 players here. There are plenty of other players who were close to an MVP but never won one, but the way I chose these 5 players was by looking at my top 50 players of all time list, going down and finding the 5 highest ranked players who have not won an MVP award. And those 5 players were Dwyane Wade, Jerry West, Kawhi Leonard, Chris Paul, and Elgin Baylor. However, because Kawhi is still active and in his prime, I'm going to remove him from this conversation. I understand that Chris Paul is still active, however, at his age, he's just as likely to win an MVP as I am to win Sexiest Man Alive. So to add to the top 5, I'm putting in Clyde Drexler. Technically, I have Elvin Hayes 1 spot above him, but I think they're both about equal as talents and career-wise. I just had Elvin 1 spot ahead because of longevity. So I'm going to choose Clyde because I just think he's more fun than Elvin Hayes. Now, in terms of talent, that is basically my top 5 players in order from 1 to 5 who have never won an MVP. However, that's just from a talent perspective. I wanted to take the approach of ranking these guys based on who was the closest to winning an actual MVP throughout their careers. So I'm going to take the approach of ranking them based on which of these 5 was the closest to winning one, if that makes sense. So technically, I have Dwyane Wade as the best player to never win MVP, but let's look at the individual season where each of these 5 were closest to MVP and determine who had the best case but didn't win. And starting at 4 and 5, I have to put Elgin Baylor and Jerry West next to each other simply because they cancel each other out, and that's why they never won an MVP. West and Baylor played a majority of their careers together. Baylor played 2 seasons without West to begin his career, where he averaged 27 points and 16 rebounds a game as a wing. However, he shot 41% from the field, and the Lakers went 33 and 39 in the first year, 25 and 50 in the second. And then Jerry West was drafted after that, so he never really had a season where he was the best player on his team, or at the very least, every season he had a player on his level on his team. It's kind of like how Kevin Durant and Steph Curry were never going to win an MVP once that team was formed together. And then for Jerry West, he played with prime Elgin Baylor for all but the last 4 seasons of his career. And by then, his numbers were not as impressive as his earlier career numbers. The season that West averaged 27, 7, and 6, the Lakers won 55 games, but Baylor averaged 34, 14, and 5, and that works vice versa. So I'll put Baylor at the bottom at 5 and West at the 4 simply because West was a better player. There was really no season throughout these guys' career where you could say they deserved the MVP over the player who won it. Those players just deserved it more. Next up, we have Clyde Drexler, who I feel is one of the more underrated players of all time. He unfortunately did not win an MVP simply because his entire existence was overshadowed by Michael Jordan. Both in the fact that he had to play in the same era as Michael Jordan, which is no fun for anybody, but also he had the misfortune of playing the same position in a very similar way. Drexler was a big two guard who was very athletic, a good ball handler, and a really good shot creator. However, the issue with this is because he played so similar to Michael Jordan, and because it was so clear that Michael Jordan was better, there was no way that a B- Michael Jordan was going to win an MVP when Michael Jordan was already there to begin with. It's like the same reason people don't rank Kobe Bryant over Michael Jordan, because they're so similar, with Jordan being so clearly better that it doesn't make sense to anyone who isn't delusional. I think the reason Malone, Barkley, and Hakeem Olajuwon were able to win MVPs in the 90s was because they played so different from MJ, and obviously they played different positions. Barkley and Malone were both scoring power forwards, and Hakeem was both a great defender and the most fundamentally sound center ever. Also, David Robinson won one, but both him and Hakeem won those in the years that Jordan was not playing, so they might not have if he was playing. Because they played different positions, did different things than Jordan, you couldn't directly compare them because they were just so clearly two different types of players. So because they were different, they didn't have to deal with that comparison. For Drexler, he had a season where he averaged 27 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2.5 steals on a 50% shooting, and he led the Blazers to 53 wins, but there was just no way he was ever going to win an MVP over Michael Jordan because he was just so clearly the same but worse. So he was just a victim of the circumstance of a player in the league playing the same as him but just so clearly better. And I just realized 1,000 words into this script that I forgot to mention Isaiah Thomas, and I just wrote that whole thing about Clyde Drexler, so I'm not gonna erase it. I have him ranked over Baylor and Clyde Drexler. I guess I just skipped over it when I was looking down the list, so I guess I can talk about him real quick. Basically, the main reason Thomas never won an MVP is his highest box score seasons did not align with his most winning seasons. The year that he averaged 21 and 11, only 49 wins. This season he averaged 21 and 14, only 46 wins. When the team was competing for and winning championships, Isaiah Thomas had to reduce his numbers for the betterment of his team. So as a result, his numbers when the team was winning mid-50s to 60 games, his numbers were not really that crazy. The 2 seasons the Pistons won their championships, Thomas averaged 18 and 9 on 45% shooting, which is obviously not MVP numbers. Also notice how the Pistons got better when Thomas stopped hogging all of the assists. Something to keep in mind. So I would probably put Thomas at the bottom at number 6 because he just simply never had a window where he should have been or even was anywhere close to winning an MVP. And in the top 2 spots, I have both Dwyane Wade and Chris Paul, because both of them had their best cases for MVP in the same season in 2009. I understand that Chris Paul also had a great 2008 season, but I think 2009 was a little bit better of a case. The 2009 MVP race is one of the more interesting ones in NBA history. Not that it necessarily should be, but it is, and nobody talks about it all that much. In 2009, Wade averaged a career best and league best 31 points a game, as well as 5 rebounds and 7.5 assists, shooting 49% from the field. This is one of the more underrated carry jobs in NBA history. This season really wasn't that much less impressive than Kobe's 2006 season. However, unlike Kobe's 2006 season, this Miami Heat team only won 43 games. Now, this was not Dwyane Wade's fault. His next best players were an well out of prime Jermaine O'Neal, Shawn Marion, and a rookie Michael Beasley, who was a bust. But at the end of the day, I cannot say that Dwyane Wade should have won MVP, because 43 wins is just simply not enough. Now, as for Chris Paul, 2009 was his best individual season as well. He averaged 23 points, 11 assists, 5 rebounds, and 3 steals on 50, 36, 87. And actually, both he and Dwyane Wade had 2 of the top 25 player efficiency ratings in NBA history this year, with both of them having PERs in the 30s. Both of these 2 were having dominant performances day in and day out. with Paul dominating the game with his control of the game and Wade with his scoring and passing and defense. Chris Paul also with his defense. However, again with Chris Paul, his team won just 49 games. The actual MVP this season was LeBron James, who averaged 28, 7, and 7 on 49% shooting, and he led his team to 66 goddamn wins. So as a result, I have to say once again, there is a reason these two did not win MVPs. In terms of who had more impressive seasons, I would probably say statistically they were about the same, but I'd give Chris Paul a bit of an edge because his team won 6 more games in a tougher conference. And in terms of ranking, I'm also going to put Paul ahead of Wade just because he also had the 2008 season where you could argue his case was just as good as this one. So those are my rankings. Chris Paul number 1, Wade at 2, Drexler at 3, West at 4, Baylor at 5, and Thomas, who I forgot, at 6. But in terms of the most talented players to never win MVP, Wade comes number 1, then Jerry West, then Isaiah Thomas, then Chris Paul, then Elgin Baylor, and then Clyde Drexler. Now again, those first rankings are not based on talent, it's just based on who came the closest to win an MVP but did not. And yes, there are also plenty of other players throughout NBA history who were really close to an MVP throughout their career but never won one, and I'm sure I'm going to see their names flooded in the comment section, which I'm not going to complain about because algorithm. But yeah, that's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.